Maya Collins stepped off the transport shuttle and looked around at the massive station called Harmony Prime, wondering if she had made the right choice in coming here. The walls curved upward in impossible ways, covered in glowing panels that shifted colors based on who walked past them, and the ceiling stretched so high above her head that she could barely see where it ended. Other students moved through the corridors in groups, talking in languages that sounded like music or wind chimes or rushing water. And every single one of them stopped to stare at her when she walked by. She stood nearly twice the height of most students around her, with muscles that bulged even under her standard academy uniform, and her heavy footsteps echoed on floors designed for beings that weighed a fraction of what she did. The Galactic Institute of Advanced Sciences was supposed to be the finest school in known space, accepting only the brightest minds from hundreds of different worlds. But Maya was the first human ever admitted to its halls. Earth had been discovered by the Galactic Council only 10 years ago, classified immediately as a Class 12 Deathworld, which meant it was one of the most dangerous planets ever documented by civilized species. The gravity alone would crush most of the students here within seconds, and the weather patterns on Earth could kill unprepared visitors in minutes. But humans had evolved there over millions of years and called it home. Maya's instructor, Professor Zenth, waited for her at the entrance to the academic wing. His forearms crossed over his chest in what she hoped was a neutral gesture rather than disapproval. He was a Quellan, with smooth blue skin and large golden eyes that never seemed to blink. And he studied her the way someone might study an interesting insect under glass. "You are the human," he said, his voice flat and clinical. "Yes, sir. Maya Collins from Earth," she replied, trying to keep her voice soft because she had learned that her normal speaking volume frightened most aliens. "Your placement exams were impressive," Professor Zenth continued, tilting his head in a way that suggested surprise. "You will attend Xenobiology 301 with our top students. Though I must warn you that the material is quite advanced." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak without revealing her nervousness. The professor led her through winding hallways that seemed to shift and change orientation based on the needs of different species, with gravity adjusting in different zones to accommodate everyone from the floating airlift to the heavy-bodied Grunder classroom sat at the end of a long corridor marked with symbols she could not read. And when the door opened, 24 alien students turned to look at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to open disgust. Professor Zenth gestured toward a seat at the back of the room, which Maya noticed had been specially reinforced with metal supports that looked out of place among the delicate crystalline furniture the other students used. She walked carefully between the rows, trying not to bump into anyone or anything, hyper-aware that her elbow could probably break the fragile desks around her if she moved too quickly. A student near the front row whispered something to his neighbor, and both of them laughed in high-pitched tones that made Maya's teeth hurt. The seat creaked under her weight when she sat down, even though it had been built specifically for Earth normal gravity tolerance, and she saw several students flinch at the sound. Professor Zenth began the lesson immediately, displaying complex genetic sequences on the holographic board that floated in the center of the room. And Maya focused on taking notes and trying to ignore the stares. About halfway through class, a voice spoke up from the front row, dripping with barely concealed contempt. "Professor, I have a question about admission standards." Maya looked up to see who was speaking. The student was Valari, one of the crystalline species whose bodies reflected light in rainbow patterns, and he sat perfectly straight in his chair with an air of superiority that filled the entire room. "Yes, Cyrith?" Professor Zenth asked, sounding tired. "I was wondering how someone from a primitive world could possibly keep up with coursework designed for advanced civilizations," Cyrith said, turning slightly to look back at Maya. "Surely there must be different standards for different species?" Several students giggled nervously, and Maya felt her face grow hot. All students here meet the same entrance requirements, Professor Zenth replied sharply. Miss Collins scored in the top percentile on every placement exam. How fascinating, Zyrith said, his tone making it clear he found it anything but fascinating. I suppose even broken clocks are correct twice a day. Maya gripped her stylus so hard it cracked, and she quickly loosened her hold before it shattered completely. She had been warned about this before leaving. Earth, the diplomatic corps, had spent weeks preparing her, explaining that she would face prejudice and fear and mockery, but that she had to remain calm and collected no matter what happened. Earth's reputation depended on her behavior, they said, and any display of aggression would confirm every negative stereotype the galaxy had about Deathworld species. So Maya said nothing, even though she wanted to tell Zyrith exactly what she thought of his pompous attitude and his fragile little body that would shatter if he ever experienced Earth's gravity. She focused on her work instead, answering questions when called upon and demonstrating that she understood the material just as well as anyone else in the room. After class ended, Maya gathered her things slowly, waiting for the other students to leave first so she would not accidentally bump into anyone in the crowded doorway. A small student approached her cautiously, staying several feet away as if afraid to get too close. Hello, the student said in a voice like bubbling water. My name is Pellis. I am Taurens. Maya recognized the species from her briefing materials. Taurens were aquatic beings who wore special suits filled with water to survive in standard atmospheres. Hi, Pellis. I'm Maya. I wanted to say that I thought your answer about adaptive mutation was very smart, Pellis continued, glancing around nervously. Most students here have never considered evolution from a hostile environment perspective. Thank you, Maya said, surprised and grateful for the kindness. I should warn you about Zyrith, Pellis added quietly. His family is very powerful on his homeworld, and he does not like anyone who challenges his position as top student. I'm not trying to challenge anyone, Maya protested. I just want to learn. Your existence challenges him, Pellis explained. You come from a world that would kill him in seconds. Yet you excel at academics just as well as he does. It makes him afraid. Afraid of me? Maya asked, genuinely confused. Of course, Pellis said, as if it should be obvious. You could destroy this entire room without trying. Everyone knows this. But Zyrith cannot admit fear because it would damage his pride. Maya had never thought of herself as frightening before. Back on Earth, she was considered average in strength and size. Maybe even a bit small compared to some of her classmates, but here among beings who evolved on gentle worlds with light gravity and no predators, she was a monster. I would never hurt anyone, Maya said firmly. I believe you, Pellis replied. But not everyone will over the next few weeks. Maya fell into a routine of attending classes, studying alone in her quarters, and avoiding social situations where her presence made others uncomfortable. She excelled in her coursework, her memory and pattern recognition abilities surprising even Professor Zenth, who began calling on her more frequently during discussions. But her success only seemed to make Zyrith angrier. He started small at first, hiding her data tablets or changing her study room reservations, things that were annoying but not openly hostile. Then the rumors started spreading through the student population. Maya heard whispers that she was only admitted because Earth's government paid bribes, or that her exams were easier than everyone else's, or that she received special help from the faculty. None of it was true. But the lies spread anyway, poisoning any chance she had of making friends beyond Pellis, who remained loyal despite pressure from other students. Zyrith recruited followers easily, mostly wealthy students from protected worlds who had never faced real hardship in their lives. And they began a campaign of small cruelties. They would crowd around her in hallways, forcing her to slow down and move carefully to avoid hurting them, then mock her for being clumsy and slow, They made jokes about Earth's wars and violence, suggesting that humans were barely civilized and certainly not qualified to study among truly advanced species. Maya endured it all with gritted teeth and clenched fists, remembering her training and her mission and the importance of controlling herself. She could not afford to prove them right about human aggression. She could not give them any reason to reject Earth's application for council membership, so she smiled politely when insulted, apologized when bumped into, and pretended that their words did not hurt her. The third week at Harmony Prime brought midterm evaluations, and Maya scored highest in 3 of her 5 classes, which should have been a moment of pride, but instead became fuel for Zyrith's growing hatred. He cornered her after xenobiology class one afternoon, flanked by 2 of his closest followers, a nervous Mindrel named Trevix and a smug airlift called Sarana. "How much did your primitive government pay the professors?" Zyrith demanded, his crystalline body reflecting angry red light. "I earned my grades honestly," Maya replied, keeping her voice steady. "Impossible," Zyrith hissed. "Your species was living in caves when my ancestors were building quantum computers. Actually, humans have had civilization for thousands of years," Maya corrected gently. "And we developed faster than light communication, independently before first contact." This was apparently the wrong thing to say because Zyrith's color shifted to deeper crimson, and Trevix actually took a step backward. "You prove my point exactly," Zyrith spat. "Your kind are aggressive and confrontational. You cannot even accept correction without arguing." Maya opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, realizing that anything she said would be twisted against her. Zyrith smiled at her silence, a cruel expression that looked wrong on his delicate features. "That's what I thought," he said. "Go back to your cage, Deathworlder, before someone gets hurt." Maya walked away, her hands shaking with suppressed anger, and she did not trust herself to speak until she reached her quarters. Pellis found her there an hour later, staring at the wall and trying to calm down. "I heard what happened," Pellis said quietly, settling into the specially made water chair Maya had requested for her friend. "Does everyone know?" Maya asked. Zyrith made sure of it. Pellis confirmed. He told at least 20 students his version of events, which naturally paints you as the aggressor. "I didn't do anything. You existed," Pellis said simply. "You succeeded where he expected you to fail, and now he needs to destroy you before you destroy his reputation." "I don't want to destroy anyone's reputation," Maya protested. "I just want to study and learn and go home with good grades." "Then you must be very careful," Pellis warned. "Zyrith's family has connections throughout the council, and if he decides you are a threat, he will find ways to remove you." Maya did not sleep well that night, tossing and turning in her reinforced bed while imagining all the ways this could go wrong. She had nightmares about being expelled, about Earth losing its chance at council membership because she could not control her temper, about proving every prejudice against Deathworlders correct. The next morning, she found crude drawings on her locker door. Stick figures labeled human being crushed under weights or eaten by monsters. And underneath someone had written, "Go home savage" in common galactic script. She cleaned it off quickly, but several students had already seen it and were whispering among themselves. Professor Zenth noticed the tension during class and assigned a group project specifically designed to force cooperation between different species. Maya's heart sank when she heard the team assignments. She would be working with Zyrith, Trevix, and Sarana on a presentation about evolutionary adaptation across different planetary environments. Earth's expression when he heard the news would have been funny under different circumstances. His entire body flashed through 12 different colors in rapid succession before settling on a sickly yellow-green professor. "Surely there are better team combinations," Zyrith began, but Zenth cut him off. The teams are final, the professor said firmly. You will learn to work together, or you will fail together. The choice is yours. Maya wanted to argue too, but she kept quiet and accepted the assignment with as much grace as she could manage. The first team meeting went exactly as badly as she expected. Xyrith refused to work on anything Maya suggested. Serana spent the entire time complaining about having to breathe the same air as a Deathworlder. And Trevix just looked terrified whenever Maya moved. They accomplished nothing except establishing that they all hated each other. Though Maya at least tried to be professional about it, the second meeting was worse because Xyrith came prepared with insults and mockery. Projected images of Earth's extinct megafauna on the shared screen, making exaggerated frightened faces and asking how humans could possibly survive alongside such monsters. We didn't survive alongside them, Maya explained patiently. Most of those species went extinct thousands of years ago. Yes, because your ancestors were violent hunters who destroyed everything around them, Xyrith said triumphantly, as if he had proven some great point, because climate change and environmental shifts made survival difficult for large animals. Maya corrected. Humans contributed to some extinctions, yes, but we also learn from those mistakes and now protect endangered species. How noble, Serana sneered. The predator pretends to be civilized. Maya counted to 10 in her head, then to 20, and finally to 50 before trusting herself to respond. Can we please focus on the assignment? She asked. Why should we? Xyrith challenged. You will probably just use your primitive intuition instead of real science anyway. My primitive intuition scored higher than yours on the last 3 exams. Maya pointed out before she could stop herself. The room went silent, and Xyrith's color shifted to deep purple, which Maya had learned meant rage. You dare, he began. But Professor Zent's voice interrupted through the intercom. Team 4. You have 30 minutes remaining in your reserve study room. Please use the time productively. Xyrith forced himself to calm down, though his color remained dark. Fine, he said icily. Let us work on this assignment. Though I expect minimal contribution from the Deathworlder, they divided the work unevenly, with Xyrith assigning Maya only the simplest tasks while he and the others took credit for the complex analysis. Maya accepted it without complaint because arguing would only make things worse. She completed her portions perfectly and even helped Trevix with his calculations when he struggled, though he flinched every time she leaned over to point something out on his screen. The presentation day arrived, and Maya dressed carefully in her formal academy uniform, making sure everything was perfect. She arrived early to the lecture hall and set up the holographic display according to Xyrith's exact specifications. Even though he had sent her 17 messages with contradictory instructions when Xyrith and the others arrived, he inspected everything with a critical eye, clearly looking for something to criticize. I suppose this will do, he said finally. Though try not to break anything with your clumsy Deathworlder hands during the presentation. Maya bit her tongue and said nothing. Focusing on her breathing exercises, the presentation went smoothly at first, with each team member presenting their assigned section, while the others stood respectfully to the side. When Maya's turn came, she spoke clearly about adaptive radiation and how species diversify to fill ecological niches. Using Earth's Galapagos finches as her primary example, several students seemed genuinely interested, leaning forward to see the images she had prepared. And even Professor Zenth nodded approvingly. Then the question period began, and Xyrith saw his opportunity. I have a question for the human, he said loudly. You talk about adaptation and survival, but isn't it true that Earth species primarily adapt through violence and predation? Many Earth species are predators, yes, Maya acknowledged. But many are also herbivores or omnivores, and complex ecosystems require balance between all types. But humans are apex predators. Xyrith pressed. Your eyes face forward for hunting. Your teeth are designed for tearing meat. Your entire body is built for violence. Humans are omnivores with adaptable diets, Maya corrected. And forward-facing eyes provide depth perception useful for many activities beyond hunting. Such as? Xyrith challenged tool use, crafting, art, surgery. Precision work of all kinds, Maya listed. Weapons crafting. You mean, Xyrith said, twisting her words. Your species cannot create anything without thinking of how to destroy with it. Maya felt her control starting to slip, her hands curling into fists at her sides. But she forced them to relax. That's not fair, she began. What is not fair is forcing civilized species to share academic space with primitives, Xyrith interrupted, his voice rising. What is not fair is pretending that might makes right. That because you can crush us physically, you deserve intellectual respect. I have never threatened anyone, Maya said, her voice tight. Your existence is a threat. Xyrith shouted, and the room erupted in uncomfortable murmuring. Professor Xenth stood up, clearly intending to intervene. But Xyrith was not finished. I move that we hold a vote on whether Deathworld species should be allowed in advanced academic settings. He declared. Several students actually nodded in agreement. And Maya felt something break inside her chest. She had tried so hard, been so patient, endured so much, and it still was not enough. They would never accept her, never see her as anything but a monster wearing a student uniform. She walked out of the lecture hall with her head high and her eyes burning with unshed tears. Professor Xenth called Maya to his office the morning after the disastrous presentation, and she walked there slowly, expecting expulsion or worse instead. The professor offered her something unexpected, an apology. I have failed you as an instructor, he said. His forearms gesturing on what she had learned was Quellan sign language for regret. I did not intervene when I should have, and I allowed hostile behavior to escalate. It's not your fault, Maya said quietly. It is partially my fault, Xenth insisted. I am responsible for maintaining a safe learning environment, and I did not do so adequately. He explained that Xyrith had been formally reprimanded for his behavior during the presentation. Though his family's influence prevented more serious consequences, Maya nodded. Unsurprised, however, Xenth continued. I have also scheduled a practical examination in zero-gravity physics for next week, and I am afraid I must assign you to work with Xyrith again. Maya's heart sank, but the professor raised one hand to forestall her protest. The examination is mandatory for all students, and the teams are determined by random computer selection, he explained. I cannot change the assignments without appearing to show favoritism. I understand, Maya said, though she really did not understand why the universe seemed determined to make her life as difficult as possible. I will be monitoring closely, Xenth promised. Any misconduct will result in immediate failure and possible expulsion. The week before the examination passed in a blur of anxiety and preparation. Maya studied the zero-gravity physics problems until she could solve them in her sleep, reviewed the safety protocols a dozen times, and practiced moving in low-gravity environments. Using the station's public training facilities, Pallas accompanied her to these practice sessions, offering encouragement and advice. You are much better at zero-gravity movement than you think, Pallas observed. Most species struggle with spatial orientation without gravity reference, but you adapt quickly. Earth has gravity everywhere, Maya explained. So maybe my brain works harder to create artificial reference points when there's no real ones? Perhaps, Pallas agreed. Or perhaps growing up on a world where the ground can literally open up and swallow you makes you very good at knowing where you are in three-dimensional space. Maya had never thought about it that way, but it made sense. Earthquakes, sinkholes, avalanches, floods. Earth constantly reminded its inhabitants that solid ground was a temporary luxury, not a guarantee their examination day arrived cold and gray. At least according to the station's artificial day-night cycle, Maya put on her academy pressure suit, triple-checked all the seals and connections, and made her way to the zero-gravity training sphere. The sphere was a massive chamber 300 meters in diameter, with a perfectly smooth interior surface that could generate or eliminate gravity at will. Other students were already gathering outside, chatting nervously in small groups and checking their equipment. Maya saw Xyrith standing with Trevix and Serana, and all three of them turned to stare at her when she approached. "Oh, wonderful. The Deathworlder has arrived," Xyrith announced loudly. "Try not to break anything expensive with your clumsy movements." Maya ignored him and reviewed her equipment checklist. Focusing on the task ahead, Professor Zenth emerged from the control room and called for attention. "Today's examination will test your understanding of zero-gravity physics, spatial reasoning, and teamwork," he explained. "Each team will receive a unique scenario requiring calculation and implementation of solutions using the sphere's holographic controls." He paused, looking directly at Maya and Xyrith. "You will be graded on accuracy, efficiency, and cooperation." He emphasized the last word. "Failure to work together will result in failure of the examination, regardless of individual performance." The teams entered the sphere one at a time, and Maya's team was called forth. She floated through the entrance behind Xyrith, her stomach lurching slightly as gravity disappeared, and her body became weightless. The sensation was strange, but not entirely unpleasant. Without Earth's crushing gravity pressing down on her, she felt lighter and freer than she had in weeks. Trevix and Serana entered behind her, both of them moving with practiced ease in the zero-gravity environment. Their species had evolved in low-gravity conditions, and weightlessness was natural to them in a way it would never before. Maya, the examination scenario, appeared on holographic displays around them. A complex three-body problem involving unstable planetary orbits and deteriorating gravitational fields. They had 1 hour to calculate solutions and input corrections using the sphere's control interface. Maya immediately began working through the mathematics in her head. A training taking over, she pulled up a calculation screen and started entering variables, her fingers moving quickly across the holographic keyboard. "What do you think you are doing?" Xyrith demanded, floating over to block her view. "Starting the calculations," Maya replied, trying to stay calm. "We have not discussed strategy yet," Xyrith said. "Stop presuming to take charge." "I'm not taking charge. I'm just working on the problem." "Exactly. You are working alone instead of collaborating," Xyrith accused. "This is typical human arrogance, assuming you know better than everyone else." Maya closed her calculation screen and turned to face him. "Fine. What strategy do you suggest?" Xyrith smiled, and Maya knew immediately that she had walked into a trap. "I suggest we demonstrate the differences between civilized species and Deathworld primitives," he said, his voice dripping with false sweetness. Before Maya could respond, Xyrith pushed off from a wall and executed a perfect triple rotation, his crystalline body catching the light and creating rainbow patterns across the sphere's interior. Serana followed with an elegant spiral, a lighter-than-air body floating like a dancer. Even Trevix managed a competent flip, though he looked nervous about showing off. "Your turn, Deathworlder," Xyrith said. "Show us how graceful your kind can be in zero gravity." Maya understood now that this was never about the examination. Xyrith had planned this, had probably even manipulated the team assignments. Despite what Professor Zenth believed about random selection, this was about humiliation, about proving that humans did not belong in civilized space. "We should focus on the problem," Maya said, her voice tight. "Oh, but we are focusing on the problem," Xyrith replied. "The problem of primitive species pretending to be advanced." He accessed the control panel and pulled up Maya's personal file, Something that should have been private and protected images of Earth appeared on the holographic displays. Volcanic eruptions spewing lava hundreds of meters into the air. Hurricanes with wind speeds that would shred most alien structures. Tsunamis drowning entire coastlines. Behold, the human homeworld, Xyrith narrated in a mocking theatrical tone. A nightmare planet of constant violence and destruction. He zoomed in on images of Earth's predators. Lions hunting prey. Sharks circling in bloody water. Spiders paralyzing victims with venom. And these are the neighbors humans evolved alongside, he continued. Is it any wonder they are violent and aggressive when they learn survival from monsters? Maya's hands clenched into fists, her breathing becoming shallow. Look at her, Xyrith said to Trevix and Serana. Already preparing for violence, it is in her nature. She cannot help herself. He pulled up more files. And Maya realized with horror that he had accessed restricted military records. Images of human warfare appeared. Ancient battles with swords and spears. Modern conflicts with explosives and energy weapons. The devastating results of humanity's violent history. Your species was fighting and killing each other while mine was composing poetry, Xyrith declared. You were building weapons while we were building art. He played a compilation of human military footage. Images of soldiers in combat, ships exchanging fire. The terrible beauty of destruction. This is what you are, Xyrith said. Turning to face Maya directly, barbarians and savages. Primitives playing at civilization. He zoomed in on Maya's own face in a student photo, overlaying it with images of human soldiers. You do not belong here, he said. His voice cold. You do not belong among civilized people. You should be back on your death world fighting for scraps like your ancestors did. Something inside Maya snapped, not her temper. She kept that lock down tight, but her willingness to keep accepting this treatment. Without response, she had endured weeks of insults and mockery, had swallowed her pride over and over, had allowed herself to be diminished and belittled for the sake of Earth's reputation, but watching Xyrith mock her world, her species, the struggles and triumphs of billions of humans who had fought and died to create something better than violence. That was too much. For weeks she had moved carefully, slowly, gently, trying to make herself smaller and less threatening. But now, floating in zero gravity, without Earth's crushing weight holding her back, she remembered what she really was. She was human, from a world that tried to kill everything alive on it. And her ancestors had survived by being faster, stronger, smarter, and more adaptable than anything else on that nightmare planet. Xyrith wanted to see a Deathworlder? Fine, she would show him exactly what that meant. Maya pushed off from the wall. Not hard by her standards, just a gentle flex of her legs in Earth gravity. It would barely have moved hair in zero gravity. It launched her across the sphere like a missile. 5 seconds. That was how long it took for everything to change. Maya crossed the 50-meter distance in. Maya moved through the chaos like a dancer, her body responding to each gravitational shift with instincts honed by millions of years of evolution on a planet that never stopped trying to kill its inhabitants. When gravity surged to 2 standard, she bent her knees and absorbed the force. When it dropped to 0, she used tiny adjustments of her center of mass to control her trajectory around her. Xyrith and his allies flailed helplessly, their bodies slamming into walls and equipment as the gravitational waves tossed them around like debris in a storm. Earth's crystalline structure, so beautiful in normal conditions, was dangerously fragile under stress. Each impact sent hairline cracks spreading through his body, and his color had faded to a sickly transparent gray that Maya instinctively recognized as shock. Trevix had curled into a protective ball, his telepathic abilities overwhelmed by panic and pain, broadcasting waves of terror that probably reached every mineral on the station. Serana was unconscious. Her lighter-than-air body collapsed against the sphere's wall like a deflated balloon. her natural buoyancy useless in the malfunctioning gravity field through the observation windows. Maya could see Professor Zenth frantically working the emergency controls, trying to stabilize the sphere's systems. Other instructors had joined him, and security personnel were gathering at the entrance. Uncertain whether to enter or wait for the situation to resolve, Maya knew she should stay still, should let the safety systems shut down on their own. But Zareth was heading straight toward a jagged piece of broken equipment that would shred his fragile body if he hit it without thinking. She pushed off from her current position and intercepted his trajectory. She caught him as gently as she could, cradling his body against her chest, with her arms wrapped around him like he was made of spun glass. He was unconscious now. His system shut down to conserve energy, and up close she could see how truly delicate his species was. His entire body probably weighed less than 5 kilograms. And she could feel his rapid heartbeat against her palm, like the flutter of a frightened bird. The gravity shifted again, spiking to 3 standard for a brief moment. Maya's knees buckled under the sudden weight 3 times Earth normal was. Challenging even for her, but she maintained her grip on Zareth and used her free hand to grab a wall strut. The metal crumpled under her fingers, but it held long enough for the gravity to normalize again finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably only 90 seconds. The emergency shutdown completed. Gravity stabilized at station normal, and Maya floated gently to the floor. Still holding Zareth carefully, the sphere's main door opened and medical teams rushed in, followed by Professor Zenth and station security. "Do not move," a security officer shouted, pointing some kind of weapon at Maya. She froze, her hands still wrapped around Zareth's unconscious form. "Put down the Valari immediately," the officer commanded. "He's hurt," Maya protested. "I need to give him to the medics." "You have done enough damage," the officer said, moving closer. "Release him now, or we will be forced to subdue you." Maya very carefully set Zareth down on the floor and stepped back with her hands raised. Medical personnel swarmed around the 3 injured students, their scanners beeping and flashing as they assessed the damage. 2 more security officers approached Maya from different angles, clearly trained to contain dangerous subjects. "Maya Collins, you are being detained pending investigation of this incident," the first officer said. "You will come with us quietly." "I didn't mean for this to happen," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nevertheless, 3 students are injured and significant equipment has been destroyed," the officer replied. "You will have opportunity to explain during the investigation." Professor Zenth pushed through the security cordon, his forearms gesturing urgently. "She was defending herself," he said. "I have the complete recording from the observation cameras. That will be reviewed as part of the investigation," the security officer said. "But for now, she must be detained." Maya allowed them to escort her out of the sphere, very aware that any resistance would be interpreted as aggression. Behind her, she could hear the medical teams discussing Zareth's condition in worried tones. Something about structural integrity and cellular damage. The security office was a small gray room with reinforced walls and furniture that could apparently withstand anything up to and including a small explosive. They left her there alone for 2 hours, which gave her plenty of time to replay the incident in her mind and imagine all the terrible consequences. Earth's Council application would certainly be rejected. Now she would be expelled and sent home in disgrace. Worse, she had confirmed every negative stereotype about Deathworlders being violent and dangerous. When Professor Zenth finally entered the room, she expected anger or disappointment instead. He looked tired and sad. "The medical team reports that Zareth will recover fully," he said. "His injuries are primarily superficial, though he will need several days of treatment." "I'm so sorry," Maya said, tears finally breaking free. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just moved. I didn't think I know, Zenth interrupted gently. I have reviewed the recordings multiple times, and I have also examined Zareth's unauthorized access to restricted files. He settled into a chair designed for his species, folding his forearms carefully. What Zareth did was cruel and deliberately provocative, he continued. He accessed your personal files without permission. He displayed classified military information, and he created a hostile environment specifically designed to make you react. But I did react, Maya said miserably. I lost control. Did you? Zenth asked, tilting his head thoughtfully. From what I observed, you moved across the sphere at high speed. But you did not strike anyone. You did not use violence. And when the gravity systems malfunctioned, you actually protected Zareth from serious injury. The systems malfunctioned because of me, Maya argued. The systems malfunctioned because they were not designed to handle forces generated by a Deathworld species moving naturally, Zenth corrected. That is our failure as designers, not your failure as a student. He pulled up a holographic display showing the sphere's damage report. You dented a support beam and disrupted the gravity field, he said. Zareth destroyed expensive holographic equipment and triggered a cascade failure in the safety systems because he was too busy humiliating you to monitor the examination properly. So what happens now? Maya asked. Now we wait for the formal review board, Zenth said. They will examine all evidence and determine appropriate consequences for everyone involved. Everyone? Zareth will face serious penalties for his behavior, Zenth confirmed, as will his accomplices. And there will be questions about how he obtained access to restricted systems. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it is worth, Maya, I believe you showed remarkable restraint, he said. Another Deathworld species might have responded with actual violence. But you only moved away from harassment, and when the situation became dangerous, you chose to protect your attacker rather than escape. It's what anyone would do, Maya said. No, Zenth replied firmly. It is what someone with true strength and compassion would do. And those qualities are far more important than physical power. After he left, Maya sat alone with her thoughts. Replaying his words and trying to believe them, the review board convened the next morning, consisting of 5 faculty members from different species. Including professors, and Maya sat in a chair specifically designed to hold her weight while Zareth, Trevix, and Sarana sat across from her in their respective medical support devices. The board chair, an elderly Grundar named Magistrate Kelvin, reviewed the evidence methodically. They watched recordings from multiple angles, examined the access logs showing Zareth's unauthorized file retrieval, and reviewed statements from other students who had witnessed his harassment. Campaign's Ririth's family had sent legal representatives who argued passionately that their client was the victim, that Maya's very presence constituted a threat, that Deathworld species should be restricted from participating in delicate academic environments. Maya's representative, assigned by Earth's embassy, countered that Maya had been subjected to systematic harassment and that her response was defensive rather than aggressive. The debate went on for hours, with the legal arguments flying back and forth in language so technical that Maya barely understood half of it. Finally, Magistrate Kelvin called for silence. This board has reached its decision, he announced, his deep voice filling the chamber. We find that student Zareth did engage in systematic harassment, unauthorized data access, and creation of a hostile academic environment. Zareth's representatives started to protest, but Kelvin raised one massive hand for silence. However, he continued, we also find that student Maya Collins did cause significant equipment damage and create a dangerous situation through actions that exceeded normal operational parameters. Maya's heart sank. Therefore, student Zareth is hereby suspended for 1 full semester, with mandatory counseling on appropriate interspecies interaction before being allowed to return. Xyrith's color flashed through angry reds and purples. But he said nothing. Student Maya Collins is hereby placed on academic probation for the remainder of this semester. With mandatory training in station equipment limitations and zero-gravity protocol, Maya nodded, accepting the decision. The days following the review board decision were strange and uncomfortable in ways Maya had not expected. Students who had previously ignored her now stared openly, whispering behind their hands whenever she passed. Some looked frightened, which she had grown accustomed to, but others looked curious or even impressed, which was new and confusing. Gellis found her in the common area 3 days after the incident, settling into the water chair beside Maya's reinforced seating. "You are famous now," Pellis said without preamble. "I don't want to be famous," Maya replied, staring at her untouched meal. "Nevertheless, everyone is talking about what happened," Pellis continued. "Some say you are a dangerous savage who should be expelled, but others say you showed incredible restraint." "I just moved," Maya said quietly. "I didn't even think about it. I just needed to get away from him." And in that moment of not thinking, "You revealed what Deathworld adaptation truly means," Pellis observed. "Most students here have never seen real physical capability before." Maya pushed her food around her plate, not hungry despite knowing she needed to eat. "Have you heard how Xyrith is doing?" she asked. "He's recovering well, though his pride is severely damaged," Pellis reported. "His family tried to have you expelled completely, but too many witnesses saw what he did to you first." "I still hurt him," Maya said. "You saved him," Pellis corrected. "The medical reports say that if you had not caught him when you did, he would have hit that broken equipment at high speed. The impact would have shattered his body completely." Maya had not known that, and the knowledge made her feel strange. She had spent the last week feeling guilty about the incident, replaying it constantly and imagining how she could have done things differently. But Pellis was right in the chaos. Her instinct had been to protect, not to harm. "Professor Zenth asked me to give you this," Pellis said. Sliding a data tablet across the table, Maya activated it and found an invitation to speak at a faculty symposium about Deathworld species and adaptive evolution. Her first instinct was to refuse, to hide away and avoid drawing more attention to herself. But then she read the description and realized this was an opportunity to change the narrative. Instead of letting others define what humanity meant, she could explain it herself. The symposium was held in the main lecture hall, and Maya was surprised to see it completely full. Faculty members from across the station had come, representing dozens of different species, and they watched her with intense curiosity as she took the stage. Professor Zenth introduced her briefly, then stepped aside and let her speak. Maya had prepared notes, but found herself abandoning them almost immediately. Instead, speaking from the heart about what it meant to grow up on Earth, she described the planet where the ground could shake without warning, where storms could destroy cities in minutes, where the temperature could swing 50 degrees in a single day. She explained that humans evolved not despite this violence, but because of it. "My species learned to cooperate because we had to," she said, her voice steady. "One person alone cannot survive an earthquake or a flood, but a community working together can. We learned to plan ahead because resources were unpredictable. You might have plenty today and nothing tomorrow. We learned to be creative because rigid solutions do not work in constantly changing environments." She pulled up images of Earth, the same one Xyrith had used to mock her world. But this time she provided different context. "Yes, Earth is volcanoes," she said, "but volcanic soil is incredibly fertile. And some of our most productive agricultural regions exist because of ancient eruptions. Yes, we have dangerous predators, but they taught us to work in groups, to use tools, to think strategically. Yes, we have had wars," she admitted, her voice growing heavy. "Our history is full of violence and cruelty, And we carry shame for the terrible things we have done to each other. The room was completely silent now. Every being focused on her words. But we also learned from those mistakes. She continued, "We created laws to protect the weak, medicine to heal the sick, art to celebrate beauty, science to understand our universe. The same adaptability that helped us survive. Earth's violence now helps us choose peace over conflict, cooperation over competition, growth over destruction." She looked out at the audience, seeing understanding beginning to dawn on some faces. When Xyrith accessed my files and showed images of Earth's dangers, he thought he was exposing human weakness, Maya said. But those dangers are our greatest strength. Every challenge Earth threw at us made us more resilient, more creative, more determined to survive and thrive. And when we finally reached the stars and met other species, we brought all those lessons with us. Professor Zenth stood and asked the question Maya had been hoping for. What would you say to those who fear humanity's potential for violence? Maya took a deep breath before answering. I would say that fear is reasonable, she replied honestly. Humans can be dangerous. We're strong. We're adaptable. We have aggressive instincts that served us well on Earth. But I would also say that we have learned to control those instincts, to channel that strength into protecting rather than destroying. When the gravity systems malfunctioned in the sphere, my first instinct was not to escape or to fight back against Xyrith. It was to protect him from injury. That instinct comes from the same place as our capacity for violence. Millions of years of evolution teaching us that survival depends on protecting our community. The Lari professor in the front row raised a crystalline hand. How can we trust that humans will always choose protection over aggression? She asked. You cannot, Maya answered bluntly. Just as I cannot trust that every Valari will be kind, or every Quallen will be honest, or every member of any species will live up to their best ideals. Individuals make choices, and sometimes they make terrible ones. But judging an entire species by its worst members is fundamentally unfair. Would you want humanity to judge all Valari based solely on Xyrith's cruelty? The professor sat back, looking thoughtful. Another faculty member, a floating aerolith, asked about human emotional control. The incident reports say you endured weeks of harassment before responding, she noted. How did you maintain such restraint? Maya considered her answer carefully. My government trained me before sending me here, she explained. They knew I would face prejudice, and they prepared me for it. But honestly, the restraint was not just training, it was understanding that my actions would represent all of humanity. If I had responded with violence to the first insult, every negative stereotype about Deathworlders would have been confirmed. So I accepted the harassment, hoping that patience would eventually prove those stereotypes wrong. The problem is that you cannot prove negative stereotypes wrong, she continued. If someone believes humans are violent, they will interpret everything you do through that lens. Restraint becomes evidence of hidden aggression. Strength becomes threat. Even kindness becomes manipulation. I realized during the incident that I was never going to change Xyrith's mind through patience alone. Professor Zenth nodded thoughtfully. So what changed? He asked. I stopped trying to be what others wanted me to be, Maya said. I stopped making myself smaller and quieter and gentler. In that sphere, for just a few seconds, I moved naturally without thinking about how it would be perceived. And yes, it caused chaos, but it also revealed something important. Being human, with all our strength and intensity and adaptability, is not something I need to apologize for or hide. The symposium continued for another hour, with faculty members asking thoughtful questions about human culture, evolution, and potential contributions to galactic society. Maya answered as honestly as she could, acknowledging both humanity's flaws and its potential. When it finally ended, several professors approached to thank her. Personally, the Valari professor who had questioned human trustworthiness, offered what Maya had. Learned was a gesture of respect among her people. "You have given me much to think about," she said. "I have been too quick to judge your species based on surface characteristics. I have done the same with yours," Maya admitted. "After Zyrith's behavior, I found myself wondering if all Valari were cruel, which is obviously unfair. Perhaps we all have prejudices we need to examine," the professor said wisely. Over the following weeks, something shifted in the Academy's atmosphere. Students still gave Maya nervous looks when she walked by, but fewer of them whispered insults behind her back. Some even approached with genuine questions about Earth, asking about her favorite places, or what human food tasted like, or whether the oceans were really as vast as the databases claimed. Pellis introduced her to a small group of students from various species who called themselves the Curious Collective, and they met weekly to discuss cultural differences and challenge their own assumptions. Maya found herself actually enjoying these discussions, learning about worlds with triple suns and methane rain, with crystalline forests and living mountains. She shared stories about Earth's diversity: 2 deserts and rainforests, tundra and coral reefs, the incredible variety of environments that had shaped human adaptability. Reith returned to the Academy after his suspension, quieter and more withdrawn than before. He avoided Maya completely at first, but one day she found him struggling with a physics problem in the library. She hesitated, remembering everything that had happened between